Welcome to that spiritual, actual, factual answers to questions you're asking. You find them inside you, recite you, reciting the records. Akashic, we laughing, we drafting the passion to bury. It's time for that comedy, dramedy, all of the fanciest, catchiest acronyms. Listeners, listen, we traveling. Consciousness always unraveling. The reading you're having is mapping you back to your natural habitat. Abracadabra, it's magic, let's basking it. To top it off, the host, all the classiest. Now, what were you asking for? All of the answers? What? All the answers.
I've had some debilitating healing work done.
Ooh, tell us what that means.
I will. In the last, 36 hours. Come on, boo-boo. Come on. She's like, Squeezel's amazing. She knows just when I'm like, need her to be there. She just like slept in the bed with me for an hour as I took a nap. She's just my healer dog. Yeah, so sometimes when you hit a thing in the energy healing worlds, and even just therapeutically, right? You go to therapy or whatever kind of work you're doing, there's certain stuff that's just more difficult on the nervous system when it's like processing or integrating. And yesterday I didn't mean for it all to happen on one day, but like several different pieces of sort of important integration work happened. Like I'm really kind of deep into this thing called the Gene Keys right now, which is a spinoff from Human Design. I've probably talked about it. And the Gene Keys guy, this guy, Richard Rudd, if people are curious, he has a process that you do he calls it contemplation. And contemplation, according to this particular guy, is where you look at your Gene Keys chart, which looks like this. By the way, I happen to have mine right here.
And for the listeners, it's like a bunch of circles interconnected like a star chart sort of a thing, but in very diametric, that's not the word, symmetrical design.
Yeah. It's basically a chart of how you grow through your life. And it has a love section and a purpose section and a career, abundance, money section. And it's based on you specifically. Anyway, each of these bubbles, I know the audience can't see this, but each of those circles has information in it about a thing about you. And each bubble has 3 layers. So it has what's called the shadow, the gift, and the city. The shadow is the challenge that you struggle with in that area of your life. The gift is what the gift of that shadow element is. And then the city is like the spiritual sort of elevated essential nature of that shadow once it's elevated. So it's kind of like 3 stages of consciousness within each of the bubbles. And you got a bunch of bubbles on your chart. Now, what you're supposed to do, according to Richard Rudd, is contemplate deeply each bubble, which means you sit with inside of your body, very similarly to how it works with integrative parts work. You sit with the teaching of the bubble. So I'll give you an example. One of my bubbles is called, I have the line of, in my evolution bubble, the challenge is half-heartedness, the gift is commitment, and the city is devotion. So for me, one of my main things in life is I'll be half-hearted about stuff, and then that's when things don't work as well. But if I get really committed, it goes well. And if I'm like elevate to the spiritual realm of that, I'm in the energy of devotion. Okay, so sitting with the one before that, which is my life's work bubble. And in my life's work, the challenge is desire. The gift is lightness, and the city is rapture. So yesterday I got it in my head. I was listening to Richard Rudd talk that I was going to sit with every desire I have right now. That's because I've been feeling quite pulled around lately by my desires. I don't know if that ever happens to you, where you're just like, I want to be in New York and I want to be on TV, but I want to stay home a lot and I want to meditate and I want a boyfriend, but I want to be alone. And you're like, you can't win with yourself because desire is just like got you by the genitalia. Or if you don't have genitalia, it has you by the nipple. And if you don't have a nipple, it has you by the tongue.
Right. It's yanking you around, is your point.
It's yanking you around. So yesterday, he says, you close your eyes, you breathe, you meditate, you get connected, right? And he goes, connect to the energy of a smile internally, like you smile. And then your heart kind of lights up a little bit inside of a smile. And then he said, find in your body the heaviness of whatever is heavy right now. And you could use one of your lines. So go to one of your challenges. So I went to desire because I was being pulled around by my desires. And feel your desire intensely and bring the energy of the smile to the heaviness of the desire. For example, I'm using desire, which is very similar to what you do in parts work. So I do this right here on my couch, and I had a specific desire in mind, and it just completely destroyed me. A lot of crying. Ugh, it was like,
did it come over you? Did the reaction to it just flood you, and then you started sobbing uncontrollably? I mean, I'm just curious about the sort of how it manifested.
Well, so, okay, the concept is very similar to what I do with Divine Light healing work with people and what parts work does. In other words, heavy energies, when they're living in us, part of how they have control, if you will, is that we're not paying attention to them because we don't want to feel how heavy they are. Even just a heavy emotion, Cass, for you tend to go through a thing where you're like, I don't do feelings. And then all of a sudden you'll sit and you'll feel, and then you'll be crying and you'll be like, I didn't even know I was sad. It's like that. In other words, I wasn't really sitting in the center of my desire. I was being pulled around by my desire because I wasn't super connected to it. So by bringing the positive energy of quote unquote, a smile to the heavy energy of this, I have to have it. I want to have it. I need fill in the blank. It starts to break open the heavy energy of the desire and reveal to you what is under that. It blows the heavy energy apart. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when it blows it apart, if there's any sadness creating it, that's going to come up.
Okay. Yes.
So similarly to how if you're buzzing around busy all the time and you need to sit still, and you sit still and you feel into your body, suddenly you go, oh my God, I didn't even know I was tired.
Right.
Or, oh my God, I didn't even know I was sad. When we bring the energy through, it's the same. It's all the same. So sitting with this desire, it was a great reminder for me that desire is, it's never going to, it's you can't get away from desire, and desire is the low frequency of, in this guy's version, rapture or lightness. So I personally rather be in lightness because it's liberating and feels good. Desire is actually torturous.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's exhausting.
Yes. So that was big moment number one. And I did a lot of crying, and it opened my channel in the back of my neck. That's where I do the channeling through. And I was doing the infinity thing with my head a lot. And it was just a lot of processing. And I thought, okay, wow, that was deep. Okay, fuck. Then I read some more about the half-heartedness. And then I realized I saw my whole life history of half-heartedness and being like, oh, I never commit to anything. And I have to commit more. And then I went to the chiropractor because I had set up an appointment a few days before. Yes, exactly, Desmond, the face you're making. Desmond's like, oh God. So Squeezle and I, because this is adorable, people should know, we see the same chiropractor. She's an animal and a person chiropractor. She does horses, dogs, and people. She does Squeeze. It's adorable. Crackety crack. So cute. Squeezle's like, I'm a good dog. I'll receive it. That's fine. She gets me on the table. And I do not know how to explain why this was. I go to the chiropractor kind of a lot. This fucked me up. It fucked me up. The right side was a mess. The left side was a mess. I couldn't get off the table for a while. I was just really integrating a lot. I could feel some scar tissue got broken up. It was really just kind of intense. I came home and was completely exhausted all night long. I couldn't move my neck or my back in bed, or it would shoot pain down my spine. Woke up in the morning, no more pain. It was integrating. It was doing its job, but I felt incredibly tender this morning, the kind of tender where you're blown apart and it feels like every organ of your body is on the outside of your body. And if I was to talk to anyone, I feel like you could see, Cassidy, right through my skin into my spine. You know that feeling?
Yeah. And I saw it the second you signed on. It's still there.
I know.
Yeah. And I don't mean that in a judgy way. I mean that in a compassionate way. I was like, oh, okay, Katie.
Yeah, no, I don't feel judged. Thank you. Yes. So then I'm not done. So then, because I'm me, I had already also booked a session with Nicola, who's coming on today to the fucking podcast.
Maybe you guys could just do your session live. We'll just do it right here on the podcast.
We did it already.
Oh, okay.
I had booked a session with her at 9:30. So I drove to Durango and I'm feeling insane and blown open and weird. And I shouldn't be driving. And I get to her place And we did this whole parts work thing where we basically like, I just sat with all the parts of me that were really blown out and like reintegrated them, and all this crazy shit went on. And I want to tell you one of the coolest things that went on, because I think it was like I got this really cool download of information about how the human nervous system works, because we were literally rewiring mine.
Good, because I have questions for myself about this. So good.
Okay, you're going to love this. Is Desmond, this will be up your alley. So this is very sci-fi. This is very Matrix. It's very your question about all the bodies. It's very sci-fi. So I'm excited to talk about it. All of that is to say, when we looked at the nature of the tenderness around all of it, it's this very old, without so trigger warning for any listeners, trauma talk is coming. Turn this off if you don't want to hear trauma talk. But I was sexually abused when I was 6 months old. And so that really fucks with your development as a body and a nervous system. So today, what came up, we got clarity this last 24 hours of everything I've been processing, was that from ages 6 months to 12 months, I was blown out of my body. My nervous system was really sort of obliterated. And we had to reintegrate me from 6 to 12 months back, that age of me, back into myself. And so it was pretty tender and profound, and all kinds of stuff happened. Now, while we're sitting there and this is all happening, my eyes are closed and I'm looking through my third eye at the process, which is what I'm always doing inside of healing work. And here's what they showed me. By the way, that was a long-winded way of saying that's why I look insane right now. And I'm super tender and I feel like a mollusk. I feel like I have no bones. I'm just like a jellyfish before you. So there was all kinds of stuff happening internally, but the long and short of it was, what I saw clearer than anything is, you know how in your spinal column, you got nerves, right? And some of the nerves, I guess, are bigger than others. There's like little nerves and big nerves. The big nerves along the spinal column, this is where it gets sci-fi. Sometimes I feel so weird talking about this shit.
I mean, that's saying something too, that you're like, now I'm self-conscious about the woo-woo weirdness of what I'm about to say.
I know, because it's like, I'm talking about like the physical body as if I know something. And that's different from, like, I haven't studied anatomy. So if I know this, it's through my channel. And then it's like, well, fuck, man, here's what I saw. Take it or leave it, you know. But then still, I don't know why that's even weird to me, because it's like people have written very elaborate body-based science books from channeling, which is another thing we could talk about. Anyway, what they showed me was that each of those big nerves along the spinal column is connected to like a nerve of light outside your body. So have you ever seen Alex Gray painting? You know, Alex Gray? Here, Google him real quick, because you'll know exactly who he is if you pull up Alex Gray, because I need you to have the visual reference. I think our listeners probably know. He's like prototypical psychedelic painter guy.
Okay.
You see that stuff there?
Okay. Yeah. Looking at it. Oh yeah. Okay. It's all like mandala and sun spirals. And there's a guy playing a guitar with stuff shooting off of him.
And you come to, hold on a second. Well, we'll just look at that image at the top.
There's like a third eye and yeah.
Okay. See how we're looking at all the nerves in the brain there. If you imagine that extending from your spine, I said Alex Gray because he paints shit, Cassidy, that I see when I'm working with clients. And I'm like, he got to these places through psychedelics and I get to them through my thing I do, but it's all the same shit we're looking at. Okay. So on your nervous system, the nerves, they connect to continued nerves behind you, but they're nerves of light, and the light pours in to your body, the light of spirit, the light of source, whatever, through your nervous system, through your spinal column. So in the session, I start to channel this. I see it. It's happening to me, like a bunch of light things are connecting back into my nerves as my 6 to 12-month-old self is reintegrating into my body. And then...
And this is happening today in session with Dr. Nicola,
who's coming on in 3 minutes.
Okay. Love it.
So, and actually I just got an email. Okay. So they said it might be about 2:40 when she's on. So, okay. So the first sci-fi thing is just that, how like our nerves and our spine are connected to like a network of light behind and around us that now this is the key piece. That network of light is what makes, when it's not damaged and it's connected correctly to the spinal column, apparently that's what makes it such that your 3D life becomes an expression of divine source. In other words, you know how most of us experience 3D reality as being like a thing that is separate from God or spirit or light or universe? We're like, I'm my little self. And then there's this woo-woo shit and it's out here, right? When these light, let's call them nerves for lack of a better, are plugged in to the spinal column without injury, because everybody has injury in childhood, so you have to do your work, you experience, or you have the capacity then to experience life, 3D reality as an expression of, and not separate from source energy. Now, I myself have always had a split there. I have this real ability to go to the divine place and do stuff there, but I haven't had a lot of faith or trust in life. You know how people are like, well, you know, I always land on my feet, or like, look back at your reality and see all the miracles that have happened. I'm always like, I can see them, but I don't trust it in my body. And so what came up in the session that this whole 36 hours of healing in my life has been about is that I don't trust life, because the spirit part of me has been disconnected from the 3D part in waking reality. Today, when I'm talking, I'm getting the feeling. Now you tell me where I'm wrong. You tell me where I'm wrong. I'm getting the feeling that I have to work hard to keep you awake on this one. That
Me?
You're like,
No.
yes.
Yeah, that is definitely a narrative. I'm totally here.
Okay. I was getting the sense
I might have sleepy eyes because I took my glasses off and it makes my eyes look sleepier. And I'm deciding where to look because I'm just really aware of like the camera and how the camera is not where the person that I'm looking at is. So my looking at you doesn't look like I'm looking at you because of where of where you are on the screen. And I just I think so. I'm doing a little bit of that, trying to be like maybe to demonstrate that I am very engaged, because I am. But I was aware that I was checking something, and then I was like, "Oh, I need to tell her that I'm here."
I see. Yeah, it looks like you're looking away and focused on the away thing, and hate being here. And I have to be like, I guess he's not interested. So
I'm sorry that is the narrative that is developing, but I will check that narrative and say that is not at all how I'm feeling. I'm actually
as soon as you
super
tell me,
into it.
I'm very good at. As soon as people tell me like, no, that's not how it's going, I go, cool, and I'm good. I'm like not hanging on to it. So
I'm just a big fan of that, of checking the narrative thing. And like, that's my new thing in life. So I'm leaning into it a little bit.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah. For me, my language around it is like Alfred is Newman Manfredson is really good at.
No, he's been outed.
I know, but we made a joke last time where we were both like, I liked it better when we were
it's
calling
better when
him.
He's Newman. Yeah.
So I'm going back. So Newman, he's great with being patient with me, where I'll be like, so right now, here's what I'm projecting onto you. Is this reality? Yep. And he'll be like, 9 times out of 10, no, not at all. I was thinking about Cheese Whiz. And I'm like, Cheese Whiz? I thought you thought my ass looked fat. And he's like, no, just no. Yeah, no. So I'm good at it because I'm so aware of how often I project and how often I'm incorrect that I'd rather do a reality check and go, how are you right now? Because I'm thinking you hate me. Right. Help me out. Do you hate me? What's happening?
Yeah, no, it's super. And I'm also like, everything you have said today has actually been very much is triggering stories and questions that I have. So, this is that conversational thing that we always struggle with, in not just you, but in the world of, oh my God, that makes me think of a thing. Now I'm going, think of your thing. Think of your thing. No, stop. Put your thing aside and keep listening to Katie's story or to anybody's story. So that's a challenge that we have in all conversations, right? And I was having that a little bit.
Well, so what are some of the things?
Conversations I've had with my parents in the last 24 hours, because I'm visiting my parents, Jim and Molly Brown,
right,
who you would know very well from episodes. I'll look it up in a sec. Or Desmond, let me know what episodes, 2 for Jim and 1 for Molly. The episode's entitled Be the Mountain, Demon Breath, and Jim Brown Part 2.
Good job.
Yes. I looked it up earlier and I just couldn't remember the numbers of the episodes. But point being, I'm with them. And of course, we always have fucking awesome, wacko conversations, very similar to what we have here on the podcast.
Oh.
And my mom was reminding me so I brought up psychosynthesis recently, I think in context of the soul's multiplicity conversation.
Okay.
But then and then I mentioned parts work to her. I said, "Do you know about parts work?" She goes, "Yeah, that is a direct descendant of psychosynthesis. Parts work is psychosynthesis, basically, in the modern world. It's a direct descendant. I don't know if it is actually lineal wise, if you like trace it, but what they do in parts work is what my mom's been doing since the 1970s.
Okay, I don't think I knew that at all.
Yeah. So I didn't know that either. So I just was like, ooh, you start talking about parts work. And I was reminded of that. So that I was like, bring that up later, but I want to put it aside. I don't remember what the other thing was because there were too many things coming up and you were telling such interesting stuff. And then I was trying not to talk in my head about my stories while you were telling your stories.
I got you. Desmond has info for us.
Molly Brown, episode 12, Be the Mountain. James Brown, episode 15, Demon Breath. And episode 20, James Brown, the sequel.
There it is. We should announce on this point that Desmond has taken on a new role in the All the Answers family, where he is going to be our fact checker, research guy. Is that
historian? Yeah, he is our historian, documentarian, fact checker, research master.
Yeah, that's great. What's the other word I want? What's it called, Cass, in a play? The person who does the
dramaturg. He's like our dramaturg.
He's our dramaturg. Yay! Well, I'm very excited, and I wanted to let the people know that's happening. So, okay, psychosynthesis is she says she's on.
Is she in the waiting room?
Okay.
We can talk about all of this. In fact, if she's a parts work person, she might know about psychosynthesis.
Oh, yeah, let's ask her.
And if not, we can have Molly Brown on another time. We'll do a sequel and get into that shit.
Hey!
We're all going to tune in. I like it.
Hey! And we can do it with a note. We just can't do it with rhythm because Zoom is impossible to do sing-alongs.
Oh my God.
But you could do note harmonies.
So, Nicola, we were just talking about my session this morning, frankly.
Oh, great.
Because we have no boundaries here. And
boundaries are
warning, you'll have to create your own boundaries, just so you know. And we will absolutely honor them.
No, Nicola's,
I don't believe you for a second.
Yeah, Nicola's down. She's very cool. She can flow. She's the best. And we were talking about, I was telling these guys a little bit about the work you do and how you and I have been doing a lot of parts work for some time and how it's kind of a Katie parts works hybrid.
Yes.
I think that would be fair to say, right?
At a minimum. Yep.
Okay. I want to talk more about that. But also, Cassidy was just reminding us all that his mom, Molly Brown, was part of the long and short of it is that parts work, I guess, is a descendant from psychosynthesis. Is that a concept? Do you know about that?
Well, do you know about psychosynthesis?
I don't.
Okay. Well, it's from the late 60s, early 70s. It's a transpersonal psychology created by Roberto Assagioli. There's a lot of higher self stuff, and there's a lot of psychosynthesis. So you're reintegrating your psyche from splintered parts and pieces.
There you go.
So,
okay.
And when I mentioned to my mom about parts work recently, I'm visiting my mother right now up in Mount Shasta.
Nice.
And we were on an awesome, beautiful hike. And she said, "Oh, yeah, I have heard about parts work. It feels like the child of or the direct descendant of the psychosynthesis work that she's been doing for so long." So that's all.
I mean, and the reality is there's nothing new under the sun, right?
No,
they're all iterations of the same thing with somebody else's name attached to it. Some other
precisely how we which is precisely how we started the episode. As I was talking to Cassidy about how the last 36 hours of my life have been like a weird healing session after healing session of 8 different modalities, all of which were the same, really just different attacks at the same thing, which is all just go to the thing that's heavy, bring some consciousness or light to that thing, and let the thing reintegrate or clear or heal or leave or whatever it's going to fucking do. But it's all doing that. It's all that, isn't it?
Yes, it's all that. Exactly. It's presence. It's bringing your consciousness into the forefront rather than having the subconscious rule everything we choose, right? I mean, because the reality of it is that when we choose something, there's a belief system, and then below that, there's an emotion. Everything that we choose, from what you have for breakfast to what career you choose, has an emotion emotional basis to it. And those emotions are all formed by our past experiences in this lifetime and beyond. And so if we're not conscious or aware of those influences, then we can't possibly understand why we're choosing what we're choosing. It's like, why am I still in this relationship? This sucks. Why do I keep choosing this?
Or
like,
we can't make new choices, right?
Right, exactly. So I think that's where psychotherapy can be really helpful, because it helps us have a map of like, oh, this is how I came to be this way. And now it all makes sense intellectually, but it doesn't really do as much in my experience personally with helping integrate, dissolve, move on from that.
Now, that brings me to, I totally agree. And we talk about that concept all the time on here, but I wanted to ask you, so you're technically, am I correct in saying that you're a naturopath? That's your degree, that's your like title, but the word that the white man.
That's the initials after my name now, and the student loan that I will be paying back for the rest of my life. Yes.
And where did you go? True. Where did you study that?
So I studied med school, naturopathic medical school. I did at the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine in Tempe, Arizona. And then before that, I did my undergrad at Brown.
Okay. So you went fancy in the world, very tapped into the judgments of what's right, all the way to Wooville.
Yes.
Just like me.
Yes, I did. And I was 19 and I was in my sophomore year, and I was in the second I was finished at the first half of my second year of my pre-meds, and I was miserable. It sucked. I didn't like my colleagues. The people who were doing well, like, cheated and like didn't have a balanced life, and like, stole materials from the science library. I mean, I'm at an Ivy League school of pre-med. You know what I mean? It was some cutthroat nature. And, my organic chemistry teacher had just gotten back off of like forced sabbatical for failing like 68% of like the pre-med class the previous year or something. I mean, she was like terrible teacher. Anyway, it was just gnarly. And I was like, I can't do this, And so as the gods would have it, I went home for winter break, and I worked in this little t-shirt shop, whatever. So I went back and helped him out, called Chili Bear. And one of my friend's moms, who I knew really well, came in and she's like, how's it going? I'm like, Bobby, let me just work, tell you all the horrors of my 19-year-old incredibly privileged life. And she was like, you should talk to my doctor. He's a naturopathic physician and, in Connecticut and whatever. So incredibly long story short, I had an hour-and-a-half conversation with this man, and it changed my whole life. I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is actually getting to the root cause, and it's not playing into this medical system that feels like it's running to board the Titanic by like joining the hordes of healthcare providers in that way. And so it was like just so clear. And so I dropped organic chemistry and physics, and I took Venezuelan comparative literature and art and photography at RISD, which was down the street. Yes. And I was like, I'm doing me, I'm doing my thing. I'm like, midlife crisis at 19 averted, got this. But we're immigrants, right? So I was born in England. My whole family's there. And so this whole American college, like race to the top, ladder of success, blah, blah, was kind of not part of my family's worldview, but they bought in. Yes. And so I'm the fourth of 5 children, and my 2 older sisters did not go to college. My brother went and then failed out without all the details, and we can do the details. And then it took him years and years and years, and finally got an undergrad. So I was like the next in line to do the thing, and I had the grades and the this and the that, and I was at this Ivy League school. And so of course I'm going to go on and be a doctor, because that's what I wanted. So I remember having like a knockdown, drag out yelling match with my dad in my dorm room when I shared with them that I was shifting gears and really changing. And I don't know what possessed me at 19 to stand up to my dad. He's a pretty big personality in my life, but I was like, nope. This is how it's going to go. And that's what I did. And so it felt really, really clear to hop off the bandwagon, but I don't know exactly, like looking back, I'm like, what brought in that clarity? And that's where I'm like, it was alignment. It was alignment with self. And it was bringing into my conscious awareness that I was unhappy. And if I continued doing this thing, it was going to bring more of that. And I don't know that I could have articulated that, but I knew.
I hear that loud and clear. No. And then And then I have a question on that point. So when you study naturopathic or naturopathic medicine,
Tomato, go
Okay.
whatever flows for you.
yeah. So is it, I know that you're learning the muscles and the bones and the blood. You're learning the medicine, the medical,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Of the body. Okay. And
Yep.
then you learn, like we're looking right now at your beautiful tincture stash behind you. So you learn herbs and treatments of physical ailments with herbal stuff and tincture. Say that better than I'm saying.
Okay, great. Yeah. So the first 2 years of naturopathic medical school are really similar to an allopathic program where you're dissecting the cadaver, you're looking at microbiology and microscopes and like all the basic sciences. You're getting all of that. But the difference is that the fundamental philosophy is that we're going to understand all these small parts to put them back together and understand the whole. And then at the end of our second year, going into our third year is when we got more of the therapeutics. And so in Arizona, where I trained, there's really no difference between privileges for an MD than an ND, except we don't have hospital admitting privileges, but we have full DEA prescriptive rights. We can do minor surgery. We can do injections. We can do Botox. We can do IVs. We can do, PAP, OBGYN exams and pap smears. And like, we are considered primary care doctors, but it's state by state. So,
And
so,
like, are you covered under major medical insurances and stuff like that?
State by state. Yeah. So
Right.
in Colorado, no. In Arizona, Oregon, and Washington, yes.
So let's go back to Botox.
Right.
This right here, can we handle that next time? Can we just
technically I cannot because I'm in Colorado, so I don't have the same prescriptive authority. I'm also not trained. So, I mean, we could check it out and see how
Why
it
don't
goes.
I think we should just fuck around with it. Let's
I
just
think we
fuck
should.
around.
I mean, I think
Just
you'd look
drip
at with a
some
droopy
different
eye,
tinctures and see what happens.
Let's just be casual with needles.
Yeah, and Botox and botulism toxin. That's a great idea.
That's fine.
And that really speaks to a schism in our philosophical, with my colleagues. Some of us are more what we would call nature cure based, like really more simple modalities and that sort of thing. And then others want to really take that, in my opinion, ego drive into some of the more interventionist stuff. And there's some cool stuff that you can do with needles and prolotherapy and joints and that sort of thing. But in my opinion, something like Botox, just because botulism is a naturally occurring substance, doesn't necessarily mean that's part of treating the underlying cause, treating the cure,
Right.
which is really the core of naturopathic philosophy that makes it different than what we're used to in our allopathic paradigm, is that we're looking to treat the whole person, to find the obstacle to cure and remove that obstacle, and to, really stimulate what they call the vis medicatrix naturae, which is Latin for the healing power within all of us. And so if there, it's kind of like that example of, monkeys in the woods, when they get parasites, eat a certain kind of leaf that has a serrated edge, because then it goes through the digestive tract and it gathers up all the parasites and it expels it from their body. They know how to return to homeostasis in their natural environment. Now, cut down that habitat and put them in a zoo, they're not going to have access to that. It's going to be harder for their Bobo clown, to kind of get punched and come back up into center. And so that's really the core of what we're doing as naturopaths, is as little intervention as possible to stimulate the vis, to stimulate the inherent healing ability within each of us to restore homeostasis, naturally. And so that can be, so there's like what they call a hierarchy of I just totally lost what that phrase is, but basically there's a hierarchy of interventions. So the more energetic and the least physiological are the first place you start. So diet, mind body counseling, homeopathy is an energetic form of medicine, like a vibrational from medicine. Then maybe herbs and botanicals are under that. So they're kind of number 4. And then we, and then physical medicine or, adjusting the spine or the joints is something else that we learn. And then down to pharmacy and surgery, which are kind of the most major interventions. So everything is on our spectrum. It's just the therapeutic order of when would you use these things. And we're always trying to use the least amount of force, the least amount of intervention.
Okay. So is that how you got into and forgive me, I've turned my camera off because my Wi-Fi was getting unstable, and that helps sometimes, but I'm still here. So is that how you got into the parts work? So was that a separate training?
That was a totally separate training. So we learn a bunch of modalities in naturopathic school, and most people end up having an affinity for one or two of them more than some others. So my affinity was for the mind-body medicine part of this. And so that was what I was really interested in. And then so that was really the focus of it. But I did, my very first job was at an HIV wellness clinic. And so I was doing IVs and acupuncture. Oh, that's the other difference. In Arizona, I was allowed to do acupuncture, and that was part of our training as well. Whereas I'm not allowed to do that here in Colorado. But that's okay, because I kind of feel like naturopathic doctors can be a jack of all trade, master of none. Like we have an acupuncturist here in our office at Pura Vida because she's better at it than I am. She's more of an expert than I am. And that's what I want to pull in, as people who are better than I am in other realms or same realms. So I really liked the mind-body piece. I went into practice. It was kind of general medicine. Then I left Phoenix and came to Durango to help co-found Open Sky Wilderness Therapy and work with at-risk adolescents and young adults. So I was, it's basically like a mental health emergency room with no walls. It's all outdoors. There's no buildings on our sites. And so I would go out weekly and meet with the students and run groups on everything from nutrition to sex ed to healthy communication or whatever. And then I would meet with each of them individually to address any health concerns, talk about their mental health stuff, and then support them with fish oil or B vitamins or herbs, that sort of thing. So that was awesome. But it's all kind of been more mental health. Like, so at the HIV clinic, HIV typically comes with mental health, dual and triple diagnosis, mental health, addiction, hepatitis, HIV, kind of all are in the similar families. So we had a team of psychotherapists at this nonprofit that I worked for. And so I was kind of in that mental health realm, and went to Open Sky, which was primarily mental health. So I'm still like expanding into that part of my interest. And then I went to a conference and met my first mentor, Paul Epstein, who's a naturopathic doctor who does all mind body. That's all he does. He doesn't run a test. He doesn't interpret a test. He teaches meditation and has these 3 living questions that he asks, and does a lot of journaling with folks, and has had pretty miraculous results. So I studied with him one-on-one for a couple of years, and that totally transformed my practice. And I stopped prescribing. Like, I don't think I've actually prescribed anything for you, like to take.
Oh, we've done stuff, but but you and I muscle tested it together.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And like, I would ask God, and you'd be like, this one. And I'd be like, oh yeah. And then we'd figure out together, like 2, 3, 1.
Right. Yeah.
Which
go.
Well, it just brings me to another question I had for you. Two questions I have for you. But what were you going to say? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I was just going to finish the piece. And so anyway, 2 years ago, I learned about this internal family systems, the IFS work. And so I did a year-long training where I drove up to Boulder 1 weekend a month and did a pretty intensive, like 24-hour training session. And we did that monthly for 10 months. And so I got my level 1 certificate. Of internal family systems, but it was primarily therapists that were in the room with me.
Yeah. Can you train an IFS if you're not a therapist or a naturopathic doctor or a doctor?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can. Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
So what would you say is that, now, because I'm me and I know my reality through myself because I live with me all day. Imagine that.
Hold on a second.
Imagine. So when we do what we do together, you and I, I would say what happens for me is something like we discuss whatever I'm up against that week. And then really quickly, we drop into the place in the body where that stuck energy is held, or where that part of me is that's holding any stuck energy or heaviness, or that's something that needs to be integrated or processed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of hold space for me to be with that part of myself. And then in so doing, Squeezel the dog shows up and licks me on the face. No, that's not part of it. Except sometimes.
Sometimes it is.
And then in so doing, what happens for me, the moment I'm in a heavy place and bringing my connection with you, which we talked about today in session, and your ability to be present with me, is that your presence and my presence together seems to, for me, unlock and open my connection to the divine or the all that is instantaneously, without my having to do what I normally have to do, which is open the Akashic records to get into that place. I'm super duper fascinated by how that occurs with you and me, such that when these parts are integrating, I don't know, it's very familiar to me in the sense of like, what I tend to do with people is like open their records. They say, I'm upset about this thing. I go, feel into your body. Where is it? Stay with that. Here, I'm bringing light to it. And they go, oh my God, it's opening, it's integrating, it's changing. So it's very similar. It's just that I'm doing this thing called, quote unquote, like bring divine light to it. And you're bringing presence to it. And I'm loving discovering how, I don't know, similar those are and subtly different and all that. So my question for you is like, how is it different what you and I do from what it usually looks like when you're doing parts work with folks? If you can say.
Yeah, no, I could definitely say, because it's different. I mean, I think about one of my teachers that I had in med school, and she did a ton of IVs, like a ton, like it was like what she was known for. And she was doing all sorts of cool stuff where she would take the blood out and then run it through ozone and then re-inject the blood. And it's like antiviral and like, but it's very intervention based, right? But she had this thing called color puncture. Have you ever heard of that? We could review that. So it's like this little light wand and you put different crystals in the tip, and then it's kind of along acupuncture meridian lines, but also not really. So this person was like gifted, the information from wherever it comes from. And so made up this whole thing. So anyway, so they'd be sitting in their IV chair and she would do this color puncture, on their feet. And one day I was like, the IV is just a ruse to get them to sit in the chair for an hour so you can do color puncture, which they don't get or believe in. She's like, yeah, but you cannot tell anybody that.
I think you just outed her.
I totally did. Sorry. Whoops. She's nowhere. She doesn't practice anymore. It's not true. She's totally in practice. She's fantastic. But I think my point of sharing that with you is that when people are open, like you are, we have more fluidity in a session. When people aren't because can you imagine coming to see me and thinking like you're just going to get someone to like tweak your diet and give you some supplements and like send you on your way? Like that's not what I do. But I don't always front load that because I think it can be scary.
Yeah.
Unintentionally so. So when people aren't as open or as ready, then I think having a structure and a container is a little safer, especially because more people now come to me for the mind body, specifically for the mind body piece, because they get that they've done the thing and taken the supplement and tried the treatment and, that's still me. And so this integration work, I think the people that are coming to me now, either consciously or subconsciously know that. So it's been an easier transition. But
what's a session look like with someone who maybe, like, in other words, do you take them into, they feel the part that's maybe struggling with whatever it's struggling with? Sorry, Mike.
So I'll go ahead and identify that. So like this morning I was talking to a young gentleman and, and he was talking about being creative and how he wants to be more creative. But then when he goes to be creative, he gets distracted by YouTube or some other whatever. And I was like, so my reflection to him is, it sounds like there's two different parts of you, one that wants to do the creative thing and then one that's either afraid of it or distracts from it or procrastinates it or whatever. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to work with that today? Because permission is really important. We can't just start working in people's fields without asking for permission explicitly, in my opinion. And so he was like, yeah, let's do that. And so really what I want to do is have them feel in their body, kind of like you have them feel where the hurt is in their body. So in my language, it would be, where's that part? What does that feel like in your body? And then from there, we kind of flush out like this part versus that part. Oh, that part I feel in my head and that part I get tight in my chest. It's like, okay, great. And then which one do we want to work with first? And then we really just get to know, it's like knowing a different person. It's like, well, how old is this part and what's the nature of it and what's going on and what's the story he or she is telling you? And, tell me more about the scene. And there's typically something very specific that they want to communicate or that hasn't been heard or that they've been afraid of, or, they had an experience when they were younger, they didn't have the resources to deal with it. So they came up with the strategy of, so for this guy, he was talking about his experience in school where he'd been really shut down creatively. And his teachers didn't always like his work. So he just learned to be quiet. And so now he's got this this part that doubts whether or not he's as good, as creative, all these things, right? So once we were able to bring that into the light, and I don't talk about divine light with him, but I'm in my heart of compassion holding space. But part of the cool thing about the parts work, the IFS that I learned, is that you're always trying to connect the other person back to their self with a capital S, like the self that precedes, like supersedes all other, that is compassionate and not judging and loves you as you are. And, kind of that idealized figure that we all want in our life can be you with yourself. And so that's what I'm always guiding them back to. And some people can't get there. So I proxy for that until they're able to do that.
So when you're working with people that are normal and not me, and you have them sit with a part, does that part then in the moment integrate into the self with a capital S, or is it more often?
Yeah. So what we do is we try to notice. So there's 3 different types of parts in this IFS work. There's protectors. There's the ones that are carrying the burden, like whatever the emotional burden is. So the protectors usually stand up for the one that's usually young and vulnerable. And so we create these strategies to keep that one protected. And then the firefighters are the one that are like, trigger, alarm is triggered. We're going to rush in. We're going to do whatever damage that, we need to do to put out the fire. And I'm sorry that your couch is now covered in 400 gallons of water and that there's, that you don't have a bedroom wall anymore because we hatcheted it down, but the fire's out. And so those are those parts of us that can come into situations and really wreak havoc.
Yes.
When we feel threatened and we don't understand why, like, why did I sabotage that great opportunity? Oh, that was a firefighter afraid of that you'd be humiliated because of that thing that happened when you were 6. But if we can get to that part that had the thing happen when they were 6, and then we can help them by being the adult self in the room that they didn't necessarily have in that moment, then they can release that emotional burden. And typically I'll have people visualize that part, like releasing it. Like, what did it feel like in your body? It was like this black heaviness that's like all over. It's like, okay, give that over to fire, air, earth, or water, or something else, whatever. And, they'll bury it, or wind will take it away, or it washes away in the rain, or whatever. And then they breathe in what they want instead. And then oftentimes that part is stuck in the past. So we'll ask if that part wants to come live in the future, but all the while is being witnessed by this self with we'll go through all the parts until we get to the part that feels compassionate and curious and caring and all those things.
Okay. So, but still, I want to understand, like, how is that? That sounds quite more complicated than what happens with you and me.
Yes.
I guess, because like for me, it seemed, I don't want to put words on it though. How is it different? Because there's something in this that I'm trying to get at.
Okay. Well, what happens when they can release the burden and then they can come into the present, that's the integration. So I think a lot of folks benefit from having things slow down a little bit and have it be more step by step. I think you've done so much work that you're like, okay, we're integrated. And, I've had that for 45 years and now we're back and totally online, like taking a big dump and leaving your office. Thanks so much,
Okay, so for the listeners, okay.
Well, I don't know. Like, am I like breaking confidentiality?
No, my God.
She asked.
Oh, no. We told you, no boundaries. There's a UPS guy outside, so Squeedle is like, what the hell is happening? She's the firefighter right now.
Right, she totally is.
Cassidy and everyone listening, today we had such a, like I was saying before Nicola came on, such an intense session today, and I was telling them, by the way, the thing about the external light nervous system plugging into the spinal column shit that we saw today, because we get spacey here. Anyway, it was cool. But after that happened, Cassidy, I shat my soul into the toilet at her. I shat a shit that was a circle. It was
Was it a yin yang? Did it like coexist within itself?
It was such a long, straight turd that it coiled around the outer edge of the bowl and then did a second layer within itself. but all as one line. Now I know that's gross.
I mean, that's
but
actually very beautiful too. Like it's gross, but it's a mandala. You shat a mandala.
I did shit a mandala. I shat spiritual art from my butthole. But more importantly, like
That's how enlightened you are.
my butt doesn't do that ever. It was really, I know it sounds, you guys, this is my Jewish heritage. You have to understand, the Jews, we love to talk about what's happening in our digestive systems. It's the main thing we talk about. Anyway, I have never, ever shat like that in my life. I'm 44 years old. I remember one time I was talking to a good girlfriend of mine who I officiated her wedding, by the way, and offended her dad during doing so. You're welcome. She one time sent me a picture.
Did you talk about taking a large dump while exchanging vows?
No, I'll explain how I offended him later. But my friend we'll call her Caroline, she sent me a picture of a shit she had taken that morning. And she was like, just a normal morning. And because she knows me. And so she knew I would laugh. But what I wrote back was, that's the most miraculous shit I've ever seen, because it was one long turd. It was really fucking long. And she goes, what do you mean? And I go, it's one long nugget. How did you get it? She goes, that's every morning. I go, what? Because I always have little nuggets, or like a big nugget, little nugget, or like a medium-sized nugget, but never one big coily long. So anyway, today was a big accomplishment.
Never say never.
Never say never. And I'm going to have to text Caroline and be like, girl, I outshat you today. How I offended her dad was totally unrelated. So she's there with her husband at the thing, and all the people are behind them watching, and I'm wearing the dress, and we're all doing the formal whatever, but I'm me. And so my officiation of them, and I know her forever, we're like sisters. It's kind of a comedy routine. And everyone's laughing. And that thing in comedy where you're running the room, you're killing it. So you take it up a notch because you're like, I can fucking go there. Yeah. Well, I got a lot of laughs. And then they got married and everybody was happy, I thought. And then there was like a family party a couple weeks later. And I noticed her dad would like not talk to me. He was avoiding me, and he went to the kitchen when I was in the living room. And then he went to the living room when I was in the kitchen. And I was like, something going on with your dad? And she was like, oh yeah, he hates you now. And I was like, what? Why? And she was like, because of what you said at the wedding. And I was like, the joke I made that was so clearly a joke you couldn't possibly be offended? She goes, yeah. Anyway, this is like a sister of mine. So for years now, her dad has just been like this bitch about me.
Still?
Because, oh yeah, years later. And it's the kind of thing where the whole family still loves me because everybody could tell it was clearly a joke, because everybody was getting joked at. And he just was like really butt sore about it and sensitive. So I apologize and I do this whole thing. And I'm like, hey, no disrespect intended. I'm so sorry it landed that way. I really just meant it in this way. And this was at a different party at their house. And his response was, and walked away.
Some people need a grudge to hang on to.
And that's very much this particular man's kind of like, he generally has a something he's cranky about. So like, I understood that he just needed, like you said.
There's probably some parts work to be done that would acknowledge.
So he and I would have a lot of structure.
Right.
Okay.
we would not just jump into the divine light plugging into his nervous system.
You'd ask for a lot of permission every step of the way.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I noticed something that I would love to bring up just early on when you were talking about the sort of hierarchy of intervention and the sort of the way in which naturopathic, the primary focus, which is to remove the obstacle to healing, or to the self doing its own healing.
Yes.
Is sort of what I heard.
Yes.
And I was just struck by how exactly that lines up with a lot of things that you have said, Katie, in the past around like, I can't help you break up with that boyfriend, but I can remove the obstacle to your breaking up with that boyfriend through divine light or some form of that. And that it applies to like all different forms of healing. It's not like you're healing the person, is how I've heard it. You're removing the obstacle to their healing.
I would put it like this. Yeah, yes, there's a lot of truth in that. The way I would frame it, I said this in class the other day where it was like, so right now I'm leading this class called highest level healing with a 12-step twist. And it's a 12-step class, and we're taking everyone through the 12 steps because I really believe that the 12 steps were a channeled spiritual system that is incredibly effective at creating change if you apply it. Anyway, there are a lot of concepts to understand in the 12 steps with the mind. And then there are places that you get to in the working of any concept-based structural system where you will come up against a something in yourself that won't go. It won't integrate, it won't clear, it won't anything, just because you understand it with your mind. Other things, however, what I find is if you understand it with your mind and you kind of breathe into it a little, you can like gain mastery over it. You're like, all I needed was to understand that thing. But then there are a lot of things that will not go just because you understand them. So my job, I see as an energy healer, is to break up the stuck energy that makes it difficult for you to make a new choice. Just like what Nicola was saying, it's like she's going to intervene at whatever level feels correct to break up whatever block is there that makes it harder for you to say, yes, I will eat eggs for breakfast instead of 16 donuts.
Right. Yep.
Or whatever. But what I always say to my students is like, there will come a point, you guys, no matter how much healing I do with you, no matter how many obstacles we remove, you're going to have to choose to leave your abusive boyfriend. Because you could still stay with your abusive boyfriend, even if you understand why you're staying. You understand that you shouldn't stay. And there's no more energy blocks to you leaving. I've watched people, because I deal with people with a lot of trauma, I guess, I don't know, get everything cleared, lined up, connected to the capital S self. God is in the room, and they keep dating that man. So it's, people do have to apply the choice, the power of their will to make new choices in their lives. But there are energies I find that make it harder to do that than it has to be. And that's where we intervene.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. And I would say, and sometimes because of how we've treated our physical body, that there's some physiological supports, herbs or diet changes or amino acids or whatever that we can use to support the body. But really it's kind of like putting a cast on while the body heals itself. You should ultimately be able to pull off from the vast majority of things. Now, I have some people who have, say a lot of alcoholism in their family, and it just seems like the genetic lineage of that is to have lower levels of serotonin. And so some of my folks who have been on antidepressants, who've gotten off of antidepressants, they'll use the 5-HTP, which helps make serotonin. And some people can get off of it, but I have a handful of people that just stay on a low dose because their reserves are just genetically or biochemically lower, but my ultimate goal, I mean, it sounds like yours too, is like, if, you could be stranded on a desert island and be good without a whole bunch of, energy healing or supplements or whatever, that it's really supposed to be like what, we've given the body, spiritual, mental, physical, emotional bodies, what they need. Now you're free to choose.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, thanks for that question, Cass. Yeah, I would agree that it's quite similar to what Nicola is describing. That's what I've been loving about our connection. And it brings me to another question I have for you, Nicola, which I said this in our session today, and I want to reiterate it here. I was saying that, and I still can't remember where I heard this, and it's so obvious, but anyway, that I heard somebody, a podcast, a therapist, I don't know, say, oftentimes the main key to unlocking a stuck energy or integrating a part or healing a whatever is the relationship with the healer. Like the particular dynamic you have with the individual you're working with creates a certain kind of space that alchemically, for whatever auric field reasons or whatever reasons there may be, and I have theories about it that relate to human design and the gene keys. We'll come back to it.
Shocking.
Surprise! that connection is a big part of what allows the whatever to occur. And what I knew before I met you was, because my guides were telling me for years, they were like, it's time for you to do some relational based trauma healing that is about the relationship with the facilitator.
Okay.
And for a long time, I resisted it because before I got into divine light work, all the relational healers I worked with were not a good fit for me. And I, would come away with like no improvement, no movement, no integration, big trauma responses that I didn't know what to do with. It just didn't do anything. But then the divine light work started to do everything. And then it all came back around full circle. And my guides were like, cool. You're a wizard. We get it. Now, how's your body? And I was like, kind of fucked up. And they were like, yeah. So you got to do relational stuff now. And so I wonder, to get back to the question for you, is that, do you find that with a lot of clients you're working with, that your connection with them is a large part of the process or the facilitation tools?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there is so much research on the importance of the relationship, which is why so many of us in this country are sick, is because we don't have a good relationship with a healthcare provider. You know, we go in and like we have a primary, but we can't get in with that person. So we see whoever's available and nobody really knows us. There's no relationship. Like I still remember our primary care, and he saw all of us kids and my parents. And he knew all of us. And when my mom was worried about my dad's hearing, my dad went in and had an exam or whatever. But so he tells my mom, I'm going to go ahead and, give your husband a diagnosis. He's got selective hearing. He has 5 kids and he just doesn't want to hear it anymore. So he just tunes out. And she was like, what? But he knew my dad. He knew our family. And he didn't need a whole bunch of tests and he didn't go get referred to the ear doctor, now he's 83 and his hearing is fine. Like his hearing's fine. But in our day and age, nobody would know that. And so I think that's the grief that we're feeling in the collective in our healthcare system and the approach to healthcare. And I just got a bunch of labs. One of my patients, I referred to Mayo Clinic, and at the bottom, they say how many minutes they spent. And I was like, wow, 23 minutes? That's pretty great. 75 minutes? That's pretty awesome. That's why you go to Mayo Clinic. Why is Mayo one of the best clinics in the world? Because it was 23 minutes and not 6.
Man, this makes me sad. Listen, I go back and forth all the time and I want to hear both of your thoughts on this. I as a person who needs to stay positive about what's happening in the world because I will curl up in a ball and never leave my bed if I'm not. I'm like, okay, technology, generally speaking, I think we're fucked because of it. That's my pessimism. Fucked. Bad. Like what you just said, Nicola. If we just all went to a fucking doctor for 20 years, he'd know us and that would help a lot. And hello. But we don't. Instead, we 20 minutes on the Zoom with a whoever, you know what I mean? And Corona made it worse and all the things. But then I look through a different lens and I see the gifts of technology, and we're doing this right now on technology, and my phone is a miracle, and there's gotta be, where do y'all land in the conversation in your own heads about, has it fucked us, or is
it's the same as what you just said. I think it is. It's like it has fucked us and it has saved us. It is 100% both of them.
How is it saving us?
Just literal access. Some of us have less access to our doctor because of technology. Some of us now have more access to our doctor because of technology, because we can at least get a Zoom call, whereas we couldn't even get in the office before, or literal technology that is life-saving, some of it, an endoscope that can see the polyp in my butt, just because we have to talk about butts as often as possible in this podcast, that couldn't be seen prior to the development of that technology, shit like that.
I mean, my favorite argument that I hate the most, is when people are like, but social media is bringing people together. And I'm like, live streaming is the answer. And I'm like, have you not noticed that it's fucked that we think live streaming is such a miracle? All you have to do is go sit with 10 people at a table and you won't need live streaming. And you'll be like, oh, right. Live streaming is a sad secondary sort of okay version of just talking to humans. Yeah. But I get really amped about it. So I always want to check myself with other people's perspective, because I'm like, I've got to be missing something here. And I like what you said, the endoscope for the polyps, or the cars that are less toxic for the environment. Prius, Desmond.
I'm going to be this asshole.
Okay.
Okay. Digital technology is a tool. The hammer is a tool. You can build a house for the homeless, or you can bash someone's head in with it.
Okay.
And obviously, this technology is the most amped up version you can think of, but used properly, it could probably save us.
Okay. Do you trust humanity to use it properly?
No.
We should
Right.
only put hammers in the hands of carpenters and masoners
Yeah. I mean, okay. Let me thank you
and
for that.
influencers. Sorry,
Oh boy.
influencers should have access to everything.
Kim Kardashian's ass should be allowed to work with hammers, but nobody else.
Right.
Okay, so I was listening to Bill Gates talk on. He has a podcast. I don't know if they're making new episodes or they stopped, but anyway, Bill Gates and Rashida Jones Ask Big Questions is the name of the podcast. That guy is amazing. And all of you woo-woo people listening right now who think he's trying to put nanobots in your fucking vaccine, listen to any interview with this guy. Listen to him say he doesn't have time to be busy nefariously trying to put nanobots in your fucking, calm down. Okay, I'm going to calm down. He is really hard at work, Bill Gates, on a lot of interesting shit. And so one of the big questions they asked recently was, she said, Rashida Jones, she was like, so can we actually survive climate change? Like, can we actually reverse it? Can we? And they got it. And he's so studied and learned about how technology operates and what it does that's positive and what it does that isn't. And they basically and he's all fancy with his words and he's given all this research data. And he's like, and then I went to China and then I went to Africa and then we cleared all the toilets in Indonesia. And, he's done a lot is my point. And he's Bill fucking Gates. So he's really articulate about the nuance of all of it. And they get to the end and they basically got to exactly what we just got to, which was Rashida Jones says to him, yeah, but he goes, well, look, I'm hopeful because all we have to do is innovate solutions using our technology to solve the problems. Innovation is the thing. It's always the thing. And she goes, yeah, but do you trust people to innovate only with technology and helps? Like, are we going to wake up in time and innovate to save the planet? And he was like, well, probably not.
Right.
But
conceptually, yes.
I mean, I have a really different point of view, like I feel like, and I'm gonna use the neutrality word, Katie, because I know that this is gonna, No,
I'm excited. I want to talk about it. I was just gonna bring that up. So that's perfect. Okay.
Right on.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is we get so caught up in there's a nugget of truth. I don't know, it's 70 degrees in this room in my office, right? An hour ago I was cold. I had a shawl and a blanket and my little fuzzy booties on. Now I'm flushed and but it's the same temperature that it was an hour ago. I know it is because it's climate controlled, right? And so we can sit here and be like, it's too hot in here. No, it's too cold in here. And or it's perfectly comfortable, right? But the nugget of truth is that it's 70 degrees, right? And so I think that we get lost in what's the nugget of truth? This is what's here. So whether technology is the biggest gift ever or the biggest curse that humanity is ever going to have to face is a story. And the reality of it is that it's here and it's continuing to advance. And so what we can do is to free ourselves from the suffering of it, the calm down, the fuck this, and we're a mess. And can we trust each other? Can we trust ourselves? I wonder what that'll create.
Okay. Now I hear you. And I'll say this, that's literally what I do every day. When I go into the Akashic Records every freaking morning, which you can tell how much I get excited about doing it, which is I'm not ever, but I do it because it works for me. It's like people go to the gym, I go to the chair and the records. Now, when I get in there, what it does for me is it brings me to center and it brings me to a kind of for me, what it does is it brings me to a sort of quiet, peaceful, but activated place where I can take action on my reality, not be thrown too far left, upset or not upset, excited or angry, and just kind of be in the light and the alignment and move forward and do what I need to do without getting caught in all the story, as you say, and all the, it's terrible, it's great, it's terrible, it's great.
Mhm.
So I hear what you're saying. And I know that personally, therapeutically, and on a healing level, spiritually, actually, let me reframe that. I know that spiritually and emotionally for myself, to be able to function in life, I've got to find that equanimous place where I'm like, cool, I'm going to take action because I'm ready. Okay. I wonder what's possible. Detached, objective perspective on what's next, as opposed to getting so pulled one way or the other that I can't function.
Mhm.
And I teach people this. I wish more people had a way to come to center so that they could just like show up for their reality rather than being so reactive to life that they can't.
And resistant, right? Resistance creates
React and
suffering.
resist, and it
Mhm.
does create suffering. So I think my question is just the economy thing, when I get reactive to it, is that I think for me, something important about economy, I'm actually figuring this out as I say it, is that the swings into, I don't know, the swings in either direction. I'm so excited, I'm going to fill in the blank, actually help and serve me in a lot of ways. And sometimes the swings into reactivity and fuck this fucking Donald Trump, whatever I get reactive to, they also help me take action when, if I were fully in my equanimous center place all the time, I know that I would be more peaceful, and I am, but I'm not personally inclined to participate in reality from that place a lot.
Okay.
And so I know. And so then I sit on my couch and I go, oh, I'm so equanimous, and boy, it's lovely here. And but I think I love the heat of emotionality. I love the drama a little bit. I love
Sure.
the drama a lot. I've been a fucking actor and a comedian. We like the drama. But I think as long as you have an ability to return to equanimousness or center or peace within you, and I had to train for 30 years to have access to that. I did not have that built in. Then I can go, oh, okay, I'm getting too far off at Caroline's wedding here and I'm pissing people off. Let's come back to gentle center. And her name is not Caroline, but I'm using that name. But do you see what I'm saying? That
Yeah,
like, I don't know, there's something alive in the fuck
Yes.
you and the, yeah, I love you. And then like, okay, let's take a minute.
Yeah.
I sort of value all of it.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, but I think that's the misconception that if you live in a new place of neutrality or place of equanimity, that you're not going to like, you're just going to cruise and it's going to be like the same speed. You're going like 55, like not too fast, not too slow.
Right.
Road's not windy. It's a beautiful day. There's no storms. Nothing touches you.
Yeah.
And that's not what I mean. I mean, it's more a question of seeing what's here. And then when there is an emotion that comes through around it, there's all sorts of different people and approaches to this. Like I think about Byron Katie, and she talks about how she hasn't suffered in 30 years, right? At all. And, she went through her mom with pancreatic cancer, which is a horrible thing to watch a loved one go through, but she didn't suffer through that. But the question that I wanted to ask her, if I were Oprah on my Super Soul Sunday and interviewing Byron Katie, which is the interview I'm referring to. Yeah. I would have asked Byron Katie, like, did you cry? Did you emote? Were you affected? Because I don't know how we do this human 3D thing without having emotions. And I don't think that's the point. I think it's not being attached to them and not buying into the drama. You can choose into the drama and have fun with it, but you're not really buying in. Like you see the wizard behind the curtain. Yeah. And you're not identified with the swing. Yes. You're not like, I am this joy. I am this sorrow. You're like, I'm experiencing great frustration right now. Right. And then for me, what always happens is I go, I'm exhausted from being so frustrated. Let's find the center again. Mm-hmm. Then I come back to this, but I have to tell you, sometimes it's fun out there. Sure. It's fun in cranky pants land. Absolutely.
Well, you don't want to ignore that it exists. That's also one of the nuggets of truth. Yes. My feeling about it is also like a given. It's how I often use it. Like the fact of the room is that it's 70 degrees. But you know what's another fact of the room is that you're experiencing heat and you're experiencing cold. And if you just I think some people might see neutrality as not acknowledging that those experiences occurred.
Yeah. And that what you're describing, in my experience, is the root of all ailments. All
Me
of
too.
them
Me too.
it's 70 degrees and I'm getting anxious because it's feeling hot, but it's 70 degrees and that's supposed to be the perfect temperature and nobody else in the room is getting flushed. So I'm just going to sit here and take it and not take off my layer because my tank top straps are too light or I'd be sitting here in my bra.
So then you lean into it. You go, okay, so it's 70, but I just started sweating. What's going on?
My experience is it's too hot. So how do I take care of myself? Even though the other 5,000 people in the room are going, this is the best temperature ever,
100%.
And that's illness. That, right, the disconnect from self, the suppression of truth, the avoidance of feeling into whatever the feels are, is what causes dis-ease. Yes.
And I would add, I had a question the other day where I thought, wait a minute. I was like, okay. This brings me back to human design again too. Everything does. So there's a thing in human design where this always brings me back to like this conversation right here, is that different people's bodies and auric fields are different. There's actually a type of person in human design called, I'm going to get the words wrong, but like I'm what's called an emotional, I have an emotional wave. So the way I am meant to make decisions is I'm going to get a big, high, excited yes on something. Then I'm going to crash down to a big low on it. And then I'm going to even out at a kind of 60 to 70% leaning in a direction. Now, that is not how America says you should make decisions. You should just trust your gut and do it. Or like, just go for it, man. And it's like, that is not correct for me because I, Katie, have the emotional wave in my structure. Now, there's another type of person who does not have the emotional wave. They have and I'm not going to think of the goddamn right terms, but they do what's called, the way they're supposed to make decisions is you're supposed to have a friend say to you, like, do you want to go for pizza? Do you want to go for chicken? And your gut in the moment will just go, or and you know it in your gut. And it's a now decision. Now, what I love about human design is it validates the fact that that's just some people.
Right.
Now, so what I think, I have a theory, this is my armchair theory, is that the people who taught the idea that equanimity is the whole game and always with equanimity, the Buddhists, I think they had a lot of splenic decision makers who were not on the emotional wave. And where, in other words, if you're equanimous, that does help you all the time. And you don't have an emotional wave where the emotions are a big part of your journey, it's fine for you to just go like, I'm very namaste. And yes, I'll have pizza or not. But that's the type of person.
But that's different. That's totally different than what I'm talking about in living in neutrality. Because out of neutrality, where you're in alignment and you're like, oh, okay, like this, I'm inhabiting my space and Katie's inhabiting her space and Cassidy's inhabiting his space and we're all good. Like whatever any of us choose right now is totally cool. That doesn't mean there's inaction. It just means that now there's inspired action. Oh, you know what sounds good? It's chicken, right? And so, and I think it actually makes us choose more alignment of what our body actually wants. But we don't do that. I don't know. I don't care. I'll have what you're having. Like, I don't know. What do you want?
You're talking about codependent enmeshment. Then.
Sure. Yeah. So that's a different thing. But neutrality doesn't mean like, I will eat whatever comes across my plate today. It means no. And the Buddhist monks, because I've actually studied with them, they live apart from any other relationships. They, leave their home typically at 5 or 6 years old. They don't marry. They don't, all these things. But guess what? The dynamics were exactly the fucking same. They were having drama. They were having like fights and friendships and whatever's, because it's that, in my opinion, that's part of the human existence. But we get so caught up, like you said, like, this is who I am. Like, I'm just someone who loves drama. It's like, no, that's not who you are. And that's for me where the parts work has been that bridge. Like there's a part of you who loves drama, but when we can see that as like an aspect of our personality rather than the essence of who we are.
Oh yeah.
Which is love and compassion and harmony and peace and appreciation and, all the things.
Yeah, my framing of that would be like, I come back to center and I remember, oh, here's essence, here's God, here's truth.
Right.
And I like the ride. I like the up-downy ride. So I'll go on the ride and then I'll get tired of the ride and come back to essence and equanimity and truth.
And
But
the
what I'm
difference for
saying
you right now is that you don't judge yourself for going for the ride
oh yeah, no.
anymore.
Right.
Whereas a lot of us humans will get really down on ourselves. Like, oh, I can't believe I ate the cookie. I can't believe I got back with the ex. I can't believe I yelled at my friend. I can't believe. And then that's when we go into the shame. Right.
Oh yeah, sure.
And then
Absolutely.
that becomes pathology.
Well, but see, that's my point is, okay, there's several things I think we're talking about at once. One is like, I don't, like I said to you today in the office, we said a lot of shit today. No, I don't believe there's anything we ever choose in life that doesn't deserve to be met with compassion, because everything we do in any moment, there's a reason it occurred, and judging ourselves just never takes us forward anyway.
Right.
So I'd rather meet it gently and hold it with love and say, okay, what do you need and what needs to happen now? Mm-hmm. Rather than the thing most people do, which is like, sorry, I'm being a dick. Never mind. People go like, I'm being a dick, so never mind my needs. And I'm going, hold on, you might be being a dick for a second if you want to judge it like that, but you're doing whatever you're doing because under what you're doing, you need something. Could we please sit with what you need? You tell me what you need, I'll tell you what I need, and together we'll get our needs met. But what I'm talking about, so that's one point. Point number two is, if people, I think this is it, if people are attached to being equanimous all the time, that creates a new form of suffering called, why can't I be equanimous all the time?
Yes.
And I'm saying, what if equanimousness, equanimity,
there you go,
is a choice that you have available? You can choose equanimity or equanimity, and I can help teach you how to get there. And also, if you're not there, why don't we love the part of you that isn't there? Why don't we love you right where you are? Because the way back to equanimity is always love and compassion, don't you think?
And that's what you just described, like the, having the choice to like be non-reactive or having the choice to be reactive about the thing. That is neutrality. It's the non-attachment to whatever you choose.
Right.
And that's living in neutrality. It's not like I will always feel content and just cool, like it's and peaceful and zen, and I will never have ups or downs, and I will never get sad or angry or joyful. And because that's not it. We're still going to move through those pieces, but it's the non-judgment and non-attachment, or being able to be in love and compassion. I mean, like what I tell my people all the time is like, if you don't know what to do, tell yourself, I love you anyway. Like I ate the entire bag of Twizzlers. I love you anyway. That's the deal. I stayed in this job for 20 years too long. I love you anyway.
Yeah.
I
think about EFT with that, where it's like with EFT, it's even though I ate that, even though I'm having desperate food cravings, I deeply and completely accept myself. Yeah. Even though I'm having those desperate food cravings. Yeah. And that's where you're operating from. You're operating from that place of, yes, that is happening. I see that it is happening. Doesn't mean you're not, we got to start from accepting ourselves. And then now let's address the overeating, or I ate the whole bag of Cheetos or whatever.
Yeah. And then let's acknowledge and welcome in the shame that comes with that. Like, oh, like I'm having all these feelings about having just eaten the entire pantry of food or whatever.
And then of course you go, oh, the parts work is like, oh, that's a legacy part from my mother and her grandmother. Okay. Now we've got some work to do.
Right. Yeah. Or now I get to choose to show up with love and compassion no matter what. I mean, that's the answer. If you're talking about bringing in the divine light for somebody, you're facilitating something that they can't do for themselves yet.
That's right. That's the deal. Yeah. And I think, for me, I've always been such a kinesthetic person that to me, it's like, I can't do, like, oftentimes you'll say something, Nicola, you'll say like, I don't know, what does that part want to say? Or can you tell that part that something? And I'll be like, huh? And it's because for me, the part either integrates and is whole or doesn't. Mm-hmm. And there isn't anything to talk about there's nothing to say to it. There's nothing to, and it makes me, okay, I'm all over the place, but the EFT, Cass, it makes me go, for me, like when I do the EFT tapping, it changes the love and compassion that pressing on those spots while saying that sentence brings to the shame, let's say shame, even though I'm feeling ashamed about the cookies, I deeply, completely love and accept myself. And you touch the spots on the body. I don't have shame anymore at the end of that tapping. It's all gone. I have freedom and liberation. And so I'm wondering, is that what happens for you, Cassidy, when you tap? Does it go away?
Often.
Okay. And sometimes
not every time. Yeah, sometimes it.
The reason I'm asking is not to, the reason I'm asking is because for me, anything that leaves me with, I still have to talk with a part of myself or parent a part of myself, or I don't know, manage a part. I'm still somehow in the head to a certain degree. It hasn't fully, does that make any sense?
It does. And my experience in working with other people is that it starts in the head and then it drops into the body, into the heart. You can feel the energy drop in the room, and they will, like, there's just a softening that happens. But yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of us, because we've been acculturated to really prioritize the mind, like that's for a lot of people where we need to start. Like, here's the story, here's the thing.
I see.
And then we can drop into, where you feel that in the body. What does it look like? What's the story? What does that feel like? What does it feel like to be seen and loved with compassion? And then the release can happen.
Yeah. And I do find that with my clients, a lot of the time I have to say things to them. We have to have a talk about a piece and say a thing because
the mind wants to grok it too.
Yeah. And it needs to.
Sure.
Sometimes.
That makes me want to bring up something I wanted to bring up with you way earlier, Katie. And it's just an experience I had the other night. And it's an experience I've been having for the last several years occasionally. And I've talked about you with it before, but I would love to hear your perspective on it, Nicola, as well. And it's what I call when it happens. So I woke up in the middle of the night with what I'm staying at my parents' house. Maybe it's different. I don't know. There's a mold. I have no idea what it is, but it's a thing that has happened for the last several years, but a lot less lately, where I wake up usually in the middle of the night and my body feels like it's having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, but my brain does not. My mind is clean. And I'm like, why? But my body is reacting like heart racing, body cannot calm down, cannot get comfortable in my skin, but there's nothing in my head. So it's like it's the opposite of sort of what we're saying. Like, I don't know if any perspective on that concept. Like, we talked about it being like the polyvagal thing that's going on, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, The Body Keeps the Score is a great book title because it's true. And she has got it right.
I've got it right, but yeah.
Yeah. So trauma people like ourselves who work with people with trauma all the time, the thing we know more than anything is your body holds your drama. And so our job is to get into your body with you to release that trauma or to reintegrate it. So my theory, just hearing two sentences from you. Yeah, exactly.
When the body says no.
Yeah.
Is, Cass, there's something your body's got going on, a trauma response to something that maybe because you're asleep, you can relax enough to drop into it. And your body is having a trauma response. I don't know what triggered it. We could inquire and ask you questions.
And it literally looks exactly the same for years. This thing, these attacks, they feel exactly the same every time they happen.
Yeah. So there's something going on that wants to move. So we would need to get in there and move it.
I mean, and I agree. I mean, I feel like there's cellular memory, right? That's why you can go for 30 years without riding a bicycle and then pick up a bicycle and hop on. It's because your cells remember. And so your cells don't just remember physical acts, they remember emotional pieces as well. And so, and sleep is a really nice time for the subconscious to try to resolve something. And so we can have that physical release in the system. And even though the mind isn't necessarily conscious or aware, and then maybe that's a protection mechanism, like, oh, whatever's coming through in the subconscious, the conscious mind is like, nope, not going to give you access to that. So we're going to look cool, calm and cool, but always, always, always when the body is expressing something, it's trying to message you in some way.
Yeah.
And
I've sat with it. I've done things, I've done personal, sit with it work, like deep breathing, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I've never, one time I threw out a pillow because it was happening all the time for about a couple of weeks. And I had this pillow that I had recently and I threw it out and it stopped happening. So whether I just fooled myself on that one and then it went away for a long time. And then, but it has come back since then. And I had Katie come over one time just to my room. You just came over and I was just like, what do you think? She goes, yeah, there's no demons here. Like you just immediately, I was like, can you read it?
That's
Can you read my room? And you were just
Right.
like, yeah, no, your room's clean
Well,
as
we
hell.
were just scanning for entities and demons. That's just one thing, though.
Specifically.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm glad you're talking about this, Cass. Is what we should do next podcast is open your records and find out what this is.
Yeah.
If you want.
It's just so, yeah. And I'm curious. Obviously, we're not going to do a session right now. We only have about 10 more minutes. But this brings us to like the sort of approach thing. Like, I'm placing myself as a theoretical person who has come to you, Dr. Nicola, and said, hey, doc, this is what's going on. Like, what would be your first line of entry into that conversation, do you think, in your office? Is that too weird a question to ask?
No, it's a great question. I'm going to give you a super nonlinear answer, which is it depends on how you tell me what's going on. Because as you're telling me about what's going on, I'm reading into how much insight you've already had, how much you put together. And for some people, I don't do any of this work out of the gate. And maybe I'll just like drop a hint here or there and like mention, and, you know, like I had one guy and he was having this tremendous shoulder pain. And we ended up, you know, I just do a really thorough history. My initial visit is about 2 hours. So it's like past medical history, childhood history, family history, all the bits. And so he kind of mentioned in passing some childhood trauma. And I was like, you know, and like came back and it was like, and I was like, listen, you've done all the things. Like, this is something you haven't done. This is my understanding. This is the research behind it. Because people like to know that it's been, you know, confirmed by someone in a lab somewhere, even though there's thousands of years of history of these sort of things working. And I got him back for one session and we touched into some tender places, but not anything that he didn't share. I don't ever pry or prod or push, because that's not where somebody's system is. You got to kind of honor where they are. And then that was it. I never saw him again. And so we have to be real careful around what people are looking for. But at the same time, the way that my practice has evolved, I also know that supplements and physical interventions are helpful, but typically limited. Like they're not always curative, almost never curative. And I don't use that word cure lightly. But that's really what I'm going for. But until somebody is integrated within themselves, cure is difficult, just, you know, if not impossible. So to answer your question, it depends. For some people, I'm like, great, here's some dietary things. Let's do the diet diary. Let's do a fish oil. Let's do a B12 shot. Let's just do that. And then with other people, I'm, you know, and I'm feeling out in the interview, like, how much do you realize that these things are all connected? And more often than not, because we have 2 hours, once they tell their whole story all together, all of a sudden they're like, do you think that could be related to this thing, which is maybe this? And I'm like, yeah, what do you? So typically I'm just reflecting back what they're saying. And then they think I'm brilliant because I sorted it out, but really they sorted it out and I just repeated it back. But that's why the relationship piece, what you were talking about before, Katie, is so important, because if the person and I don't have resonance, like if what I have to offer isn't a fit with where that person is vibrating, then it's going to miss. It's going to be that, you know, that wave that cancels itself out. And that's going to be true. Like all the herbs behind me and all the tinctures and stuff. I love plant medicine because I feel like it has a real energetic quality and a physiological quality. And that's really what I'm doing in my work. Like I want to, yes, do the physical realm, but I also want to do the spiritual, energetic realm. And so plant medicine to me is very much representative of that. So I have a high resonance with plant medicine, and then specifically some of the herbs, like the herb I tried to give Katie today, but I use it all the time, so I was out of it. I have a high resonance with that herb. So as I'm making this formula, I'm like vibrating with the plants and then putting that into formula. And typically I'm telling the person sitting on my couch, this is what this plant's for. And this is why I chose that plant as I'm formulating. And now they're getting in resonance with their medicine as well. And that's what I like about the liquid tinctures as well, because people can taste them and have a different experience of it. So really long-winded answer to, I don't know how I would answer you, but I would try to guide you based on where you're at in this moment.
For me, I get it. I mean, I have a sense of this being a part thing, that there is a parts work piece to it, and that we could ask some questions. I do it in the records, but it doesn't have to be, but you could just ask questions of you to say like, so if this were a part of you, where is that in your body? Or if this were a part of you, what is it asking of you? And anyway, there would be inquiry questions to get you in touch with what is this part and why is it reacting? And I think what we want to do is hold that part with gentleness and love, or you could say with divine light in my framing, or you could say with presence, and let it shake itself up and out of you so that it doesn't need to wake you in the middle of the night and shake you.
Right.
Which is what it's doing now. It's going, hey, deal with me. But it's such a buried part potentially that you can't consciously yet, for whatever reason, or deal with it or process it. And so we would together gently try to find it and hold it with love so it could cry its way through, if crying or scream or laugh or orgasm, whatever it wants to do. And then it wouldn't need to be waking you up at night.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an interesting one that we should do it. We should do it on the podcast. We've done weirder shit than that.
Yeah, we've done some wacky healings on this podcast.
I feel like I want to do a whole other podcast with you, Nicola, where we just fill you in on some of the weird shit we've done on here.
That sounds great. I know I listened to a few and it was fun.
That's cool. I want to ask you, do you think, oh boy, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. And it's totally okay if your answer is, I'm not going to answer that, you crazy bitch. Do you think the comedy irreverent aspect of just like butt jokes and poop and vomit and dick jokes that we integrate with our spirit talk diminishes the power or the efficacy or the power of the efficacy of the message of the spiritual teachings? You can be honest.
No, I will. I mean, I think what'll happen is you'll find resonance with different people.
Right.
So no, I don't think it diminishes the message for people who are open to receiving it. Right. And so I think, again, that's kind of a head game, right? Like, oh, am I doing this wrong? Like, should I get rid of the poop jokes? It's like, I mean, no, because some people really enjoy them and some people don't. And, and and again, this kind of goes back to that neutrality place of if you're inspired to let your comedy piece of this go wherever it goes and not be restrained in that way, then that's going to create so much more. Then, well, I did a demographic study and most people don't like shit jokes anymore. And, it's like, well,
it's like, I won't say, there was a very lovely group of spiritual people who interviewed me in a context that I won't name and then said, oh, can we link people to your podcast? I go, yeah, oh my God. Yeah. I give them the link and they listened to it. They wrote me back and this long 10-paragraph, polite as hell email that was like, due to the spiritual nature of our publication, we felt that we didn't want to detract people from working with you. So connecting them with your podcast where there was a fair amount of profanity and butt humor, they didn't say that, we didn't feel like it would be productive to your creation of clients. And it was long and they were trying so hard to be kind. And I wrote them back and I said, thank you for caring about me, I hear that you did this from care. And I need to say to you, people who want what I have, they know I'm doing butt jokes and they know I'm a crazy lady. So like, you don't have to protect me from anything because people who resonate with this will come for it and people who don't will not. And they're already not coming.
Right.
And they're already coming.
Right.
The ones who come.
The question I have for you then is, why did you ask me?
Well, I don't actually care and I'm not going to stop doing it. But the reason I ask is I want to hear. Okay, it's kind of a litmus test about how the person responds. In other words, I know you so well that there's no part of me that's like, Nicola can't hang, doesn't like, I don't know. But I want the listener to hear your version of why it's not a problem.
Yeah. Because
so many people still have this polarity inside themselves between, they think once there's a higher self activated and you're doing angel work or channeling God or meeting the Christ light, now a dick joke's not invited. And what I understand quite deeply is that in fact,
dick jokes are always invited.
Right. The higher the vibe, the bigger the dick joke is really
that should be our tagline. But what I was going to say is that the actual truth is that there's a whole spiritual teaching around this, which is that when you get connected to high lights, your lower self actually starts to receive a lot of that light. And the lower self over time gets purified and becomes a very high functioning engine for the work that your higher self is here to do. In other words, your lower self, I see it, and lower, higher, yes, it's a dichotomy I don't really believe in, but we're going to use it because people need to understand things through duality. Okay. If I can make a dick joke about God, somebody is going to wake up that who could not wake up had they not heard that dick joke about God.
Right.
But I'm not for everyone. I'm for the people where dick jokes aren't a problem for you.
Right.
And
exactly.
I like to be an example in the world of, hey guys, what if what you are in the world is so specific and unique that it makes no sense to any of the boxes that reality has established? And
Right.
part of the uniqueness of you, the purpose of the uniqueness of you is to smash the boxes into oblivion.
Right.
So
Right.
I like to ask the question to hear the person's response, because somebody listening right now, maybe your response, Nicola, what you say makes them understand why they don't give a fuck that I say fuck a lot.
Well, and that's just fucking it, right? Is that like what happens is everything that all the resources that we're exposed to more often than not get filtered. Like, that's what I want. That's not what I want. I said I wanted more money, which means I'm getting a raise at work. Not that you gave me a $20 refund at the store that I wasn't expecting. So all of a sudden the universe is like, well, what the fuck do you want? Do you want more money? Because I just gave it to you in the form of a free coffee. And you're like, but that's not more money. That's not abundance. And so if we're constantly filtering through this ego mind, through all these stories, through all these dark corners that we are not willing to look at because we're too busy on our social media, then you're going to continue to filter your experience and therefore limit it. So if you are someone who doesn't like butt and dick jokes, like maybe just let that filter through and receive the rest of the message of this podcast. Like my teacher, when she does these energy activations, she's bilingual. So she does them in French and in English. And at first I would get so aggravated, like, this is a 40-minute thing. It could be 20 minutes if it was just in English, like, I don't have time for this. And then one day it was like, when you hear the French, just that's the vibration that gets to go through your heart. And then when you hear the English, that's for your mind. And so I've totally reframed it. It's another story. It's bullshit, just like the first one. But the point is that we get to receive. And if you want prosperity, abundance, all of it, you get to eat what's on your plate rather than like, oh yeah, I'm not actually eating this or this or this. It's like, no, it's a giant buffet. Choose what you want.
Yeah. So, but what you're talking about, Nicola, is actually an advanced concept about receiving that I think a lot of people really have a hard time with because they're so identified with their points of view.
Yes.
In other words, I'm a liberal, so I believe these right things, and I don't believe these wrong things that are not liberal. So I can only believe these 6 things, which means they can now not receive from the rest of the universe.
Exactly.
They can only receive through the little tiny narrow filter of what's right in their liberal framing, or right in their Jewish framing, or right in their lady framing, or whatever the frame is.
Right.
But this is a big topic, and you just said a lot of things like, well, it's like this, because you and I have been working with this concept a lot, but we should do a separate conversation on just what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what you said was, it assumes a willingness on the part of the individual to look at the part of themselves, back to the parts work, that says no to the coffee that's given for free.
Right.
Most people
But chances are somebody who's listening to this podcast is there.
Maybe.
Chances are. Because they wouldn't be listening. They wouldn't be questing, inquiring, curious. Otherwise, why else are they listening to this podcast?
Oh yeah, I'm not telling you not to say it. I'm just saying we really have to unpack that thing you just said. There's so much in there.
There's a lot there, And I think for people who maybe this is the first time they're hearing this concept, like it's just like a step back. Like, that's an interesting point of view, or as Byron Katie always says, is that true? And then the second question is, do I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that is true?
Yeah.
And almost never can I answer yes.
I know. Mine is, the way I do it is I go, what's the fear under that resistance? Or what's the fear under that judgment?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But you have to know that the judgment first.
That's right. That's why I'm saying
so
we have
back
to-
up a little bit to say,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that a fact that we would all agree on? Or is that just my perception, my point of
Right.
view, my
But
opinion?
That's my point, is that people don't do the backup. A lot of people, they just go, but my liberal agenda says this, therefore
But
that's all I
this
can
is the way
hear.
that it is. And that's where we get
Yes.
into that. And then we're even like more entrenched in the duality of right, wrong,
Right,
you know,
wrong,
good, bad,
good,
positive,
bad,
negative,
Pod
Up,
Puck. Oh,
up,
wait, that's a
up, down, man, woman.
right?
Yeah, totally.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with us. I want to let us all go on with our days at this time that we said we would do that. It's exactly 4:04, which is a magic number, which we'll talk about next time. Nicola, you're my favorite. You're the best. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks. It was so much fun to be here. I'm excited to do it again. Thanks for
Yay!
inviting
Awesome.
me. Yeah.
We definitely need to
another
have
one.
you back.
follow
Yeah.
up.
Whoop, whoop.
All right. We love
Awesome.
you. Thank you.
Mwah. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Mwah.
Bye.
Do your
Your
work.
work. Wait, let's do the note.
Do your work. Is that it?
Damn close.
I love you.
What are you asking for? All of the answers? Say what? All of the answers? Yeah, all the answers.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you. Please email us with your questions so that we have questions to answer in the Akashic Records. Our email address is allanswerspod@gmail.com. That's allanswerspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to find us on Facebook or Twitter, it's @allanswerspod, @allanswerspod. Thank you.
So, Katie, if you don't want to wear headphones, then don't even bother with a home recording.
Wow, that sounded aggressive. If you don't want to wear headphones, don't even bother with the home recording. Get out of here. You sound like you're at the edge of your rope about a thing I didn't know was a problem.
That was a Sounds Awesome production.